That down. Let's move on to this, shall we? The world of Westeros on the screen has proven to be incredibly successful and insanely lucrative. The original show, Game of Thrones, I feel safe in saying it's not my all-time favorite. It's not my top 3 all-time favorite, but without question, it is the biggest pop cultural impact show ever in history. There's never been a show that's had the pop cultural impact that Game of Thrones has had. And no other shows remotely come close to winning as many Emmys as Game of Thrones did too. Then along came House of the Dragon, which people wondered, will this be any good? Show's amazing. Absolutely fantastic. And clearly there's a big hunger for Game of Thrones and the world of Westeros content. Now, some of you may know that Benioff and Weiss and George R.R. Martin originally wanted, as they were getting through Game of Thrones, the series, they wanted to end it off with movies. They famously wanted to end Game of Thrones with 3 feature films. Now, Warner Brothers didn't want to do that, and that's fine. It worked out great the way Warner Brothers wanted it to, with ratings, Emmys, all that kind of stuff. But there was always the idea there that they wanted to do movies. Well, according to the Hollywood Reporter now, Game of Thrones, a movie, is in early development at Warner Brothers. The studio has been quietly developing a film based on George R.R. Martin's fantasy universe as HBO Max and Warner Brothers increasingly cross-pollinate the company's big fantasy titles. Because remember, we've also got another Game of Thrones series coming shortly with something and Egg.
The Hedge Knight.
The Hedge Knight. What are the name of the characters
Duncan
again?
Egg.
That's it.
Well, it's
Thank you.
Aegon. It's Aegon and Sir Duncan something.
So Duncan Egg. And that we've already seen the first production photos coming to that. That series is coming, and I'm actually pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be interesting. For them to now try, Warner Brothers, this represents a kind of change in philosophy when it comes to Westeros. And they kind of now believe they can have a huge franchise, not just an individual series, 1 or 2. They believe they can have a huge franchise here. Whether they can or they can't, we'll find out. But the idea of taking it to the big screen and telling a confined 2.5-hour story on the big screen, I can say this right now, I think it's a gamble worth taking. I think it's a roll of the dice that I think is worth a shot, because the potential upside is huge. It could fall on its face and fail, but the potential upside is big. Now, what is not in this article is, what would the time frame be? When would this take place? Because Game of Thrones happens during the events of Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon takes place, what, 70, 80 years before the events of Game of Thrones? I can't remember exactly.
It's like 100 something.
Like 100 something? There you go. I think Dunk and Egg are supposed to take place in between that.
That's the one that's like 70 years before.
Yeah, okay. So it's like in between the events of House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
So where will this be? I want to propose a couple of options. Option number 1, a movie entirely set in Old Valyria.
Ooh.
Like way back. Prior to Aegon and his sister wives coming over and taming of Westeros. Like Old Valyria kind of story. In the heyday with dragons and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think that would be interesting. If you want to make a Star Wars comparison, it would be like doing the Old Republic, right? So if you want to do an Old Republic in the world of Game of Thrones, I think there's some very, very cool stories you could tell there. The second one that I think would be interesting to see is fast forward a little bit to Aegon and his sister wives, the taming of Westeros, like that story. That could be an interesting one too. So I think 1, just story strictly in Old Valyria. 2, the taming of Westeros. The third one, and honestly the one I would personally vote for, I want to see the immediate aftermath of Game of Thrones. I want to see Jon Snow. I know not everybody's going to agree with me on that, and that's fine. But the one I'd be interested in either of those other concepts as well. But for me, I want to see what happens after Jon Snow goes north of the Wall again. And the kingdom needing him, and he has to return. And all that. I would really like to see that. Because you know me, I'm I like my stories moving forward rather than backwards. It's not that you can't do great stuff moving backwards. I just like seeing stories move forward. So that's kind of like what I would like to see at any point. Anyway, Chris, what do you think about the concept of taking, this franchise of Game of Thrones and moving it to the big screen? And what story could they tell? Like, what time period would you like to see them try to cover?
Well, I didn't really have it on my bingo card that we would get Game of Thrones movie announcements before like Blade would move forward or Star Wars was on the big screen again. So there's that. That's just something I'm grappling with myself.
True.
I also don't think George R. R. Martin is ever going to finish any of these books
Of
because
course
why
he's
would he
not.
have to? Why would he have
Yeah.
to? So for that reason, would love to know what happens after the series so we could kind of put a little push on that. Because I am interested in seeing where all of our friends are and what they're up to. And I love Jon Snow and I would love that. And I love Tyrion Lannister. I want more of them. I would like Old Valyria. I'd really like more about the Night King and all the White
I was
Walkers.
leaning that way.
Yeah, I think that's another one that some people
Because
said actually going more into the lore of the Night
They
King.
had that series that they canceled that was supposed to be
Yep.
10,000 years before any of this. I mean, because you could have Old Valeria as well, but
Sure.
this is more about the Andals and the First Men coming to Westeros
Yeah.
and the establishing of the Night King and all of that would be cool.
I think it'd be really, really interesting
don't
because
know.
you have so much lore that you can dive into, and that's
and
a
all
really
the children,
messed up sword.
they're pretty much extinct. So all the children
Children
of the forest, these
yeah.
magical creatures
Yeah.
that are no longer living there.
Yeah.
Really?
Exactly.
But
which
I think the
would be
reason
really interesting.
you brought up one of the reasons that I really would like to see a Jon Snow center one moving forward because it brings back Peter Dinklage. Peter Dinklage playing Tyrion Lannister is like one of the great characters we've had on television the last
It's
20
a
years,
masterclass in acting,
right? And I love I've liked seeing him in several other things that he's been in since. He's done some really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But God, he shines. He shines in Game of Thrones. And like the idea of just having like Jon Snow, Tyrion, one or two of the others, Sir Stavros or whatever, like back.
Yeah.
I would love to see what happens next. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, The Perfect Jean. Look, you guys know I've been talking about The Perfect Jean for a while now. I absolutely love these. They fit like a dream, they look fantastic, and they are so comfortable, you forget you're even wearing pants. We all love jeans, but look, we all also know they can be a little bit uncomfortable for the boys, but not with The Perfect Jean. These jeans fit like they were custom made, stretch like you wouldn't believe, and they look absolutely fantastic. The Perfect Jean also has a seriously massive range of sizes, everything from 26 to 50 and lengths of 26 to 38. These have become my absolute go-to jeans whenever I'm hanging around the house or even going out for the day. And listen, the Perfect Jean isn't even just pants. They've revolutionized t-shirts as well. The Perfect Tee has just enough stretch to hide that beer belly while accentuating your arms and chest for that flawless look. My guys, it's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order, plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use the code CAMPIA at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with the promo code CAMPIA. And after you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the John Campea Show and tell them we sent you. F your khakis and get the Perfect Jean. But again, all that other stuff. Children of the Forest, Night King, Old Valyria, The Taming of Westeros, like all that would be good. And again, will it work? Bring it to the big screen? You guys know I have apprehensions about trying to take TV projects and bring them to the movie theaters. I have some concerns about that, but I think this is a gamble worth taking because the upside is definitely there. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Do you like the idea of them trying to get a Game of Thrones film going in theaters? If so, where would you put it? Let's say they gave you a call and say, what time period should we put it in the history of Westeros? Do you go Old Republic? Do you go New Republic? What do you do with it? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show Podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.